Ladies and gentlemen, Zain Shamoon.
When I was 23, I was in a hospital room where my dad was passing away. My family was in the room and my mom was on the right side of the bed and she was sobbing on her knees, wondering what she was going to do with her life after my dad was gone. I was on another side of the bed, grabbing my dad's foot because it was the only thing I could hold on to. I kept asking him, "Where are you going? Where are you going, dude? Where are you going?" I used to wonder that way about my dad and where he was going when I was 3 years old. He used to wake up in the morning and he'd wear these great suits and these great ties, and he'd be off. Everybody that knew my dad during his life always saw him in a suit. So my dad would get ready and he'd go off to work, and he worked for the District of Romulus. He was a social service provider for the Family Independent Agency. So that meant that he helped families get resources, and it meant that he helped people get jobs so they could develop and grow. But I didn't know that at 3. What I saw at 3 is around 5 or 6 o'clock, I see my dad's car in our curved driveway zoom towards the garage, and there'd be a Michigan emblem on his state car. And it meant that it was time for dinner. And I would wait there anxiously for him to come inside. But it also meant at 3 that we would go up to his room and we would play. I remember my dad's ties on the back of his closet door, those awesome ties. And I remember his smell. It was like cologne, but more like, you know, like when you have like somebody's laundry and you know it's theirs? Like that. So, yeah, I remember my dad had his own smell, and we would wrestle and he would let me win, and I felt like $1 million. And then sometimes we would go downstairs into our living room, and I had this like Fisher-Price basketball hoop because I love basketball, and me and my dad would take turns shooting. And it was like he didn't know I was a 3-year-old because he would like shoot right at the hoop like he was competing with me, and then I would shoot and I'd miss and be like, "You missed it." And I'd be like, I like chuckle because I didn't know what was going on, and then I'd be like, "Your turn, Dad," and then like we'd go back and forth. And I had so much fun. I could tell because I was getting really tired, and I was smiling and laughing and having a good time. My dad would throw and I would throw. It was such a good time. I was really happy. But that all changed by the time I was 9, because my dad had triple bypass heart surgery, and a year after that he had lymphoma cancer. So cancer of the lymph nodes. My siblings are 10 and 13 years older than me, and I'm the baby, which is why I'm expressive. I'm on stage, right? I don't keep my feelings to myself. Yeah. And my siblings are older than me, and my mom and everybody, they always seemed to know what was going on with my dad's health more than me. Don't get me wrong, they were nervous, but not nervous like a 9-year-old who didn't know what was going on. And so I felt really frozen. And I was like, is my dad gonna die? What's gonna happen? What's lymphoma? I had no idea. But that didn't last long, because my dad, even though he was sick, he put on his awesome suits, he put on his awesome ties, and he would still go to work. I have this vivid memory of all of his coworkers coming over, and they were in our living room, and my dad was in the middle of his chemotherapy, hairless, and they were celebrating this thing called Project Zero. What Project Zero is, I didn't know at the time, but Project Zero is every single client they took on that season was going to have a job. And 0 was the amount of people that they failed. And they did it. My dad did it in the middle of his chemotherapy. So I never saw my dad vulnerable. I didn't see my dad sick. He didn't let himself look that way, and so I started to get really shy around him. I didn't feel like I could play around him because he was always putting on his suits and going to work. I remember one time my mom, it was on one of my birthdays, 9 or 10, my mom said, take a picture with your dad, and I didn't know where to stand. I didn't know, like how I should do it. Should I hug him? Should I not? And I think I was probably stoic or something. I don't know. but I got really shy around my father. But it got worse by the time I was 12. And that's because that heart surgery and that cancer, my dad conquered both. And so my vision of him being this big guy who never fell became imprinted on my brain. And all I wanted at 12 was a PlayStation. So I was like, how do I talk? I'm trying to play Madden, and he's putting out fires in the community and in the family. And I remember I really just wanted to do well by him. You know, I would only start to talk to him about things if I knew that he would be impressed. So if I got a good grade, I'd go to his room and I'd share it with him. But if I wanted to talk to him about religion or prayer or what I was interested in or music, I started to get into hip hop and classic rock and poetry. I would never share these things with him because I thought it would be like little stuff to him, you know? He's putting out all these fires. So I would stay on the driveway, the curved driveway, and play basketball, not with my dad anymore, but by myself. My mom would be about the house taking care of him, and he would be in his room, and I wouldn't go there. It got even worse by the time I was 15, partly because I'm the, you know, expressive baby, and I wouldn't show him that expressive baby stuff, and he was this big guy. But also because I was failing physics in high school. I was having a hard time, and I just didn't want to talk to my dad. I remember one time he took me to my driver's test, and I was ready, I was prepared, I was ready to drive, I was ready to be free. And my dad was with me, and I saw him in the rearview mirror, and I didn't want to disappoint him. Like, that's all I was thinking. I don't want to disappoint him. I don't want to disappoint him. So I started hesitating. I started getting really anxious, and I failed. I failed my driver's test. I don't even remember the one where I passed. I remember that one because I was thinking about not disappointing my father. My siblings were off, you know, during this time, 10 and 13 years older than me, away. And so I would really encounter my hesitation with my father every time that I saw him. I knew the room that I was avoiding in the house, you know. So yeah, I didn't share anything with him. When I was 18, this became a way of life because I moved 1 hour away in Michigan State, and I was failing a basic biology class. And I would hardly go to my dad or to his room or home when I was passing, right? And something made this even worse for me. My dad got sick again, and I was frozen again, but it didn't last again. He had pneumonia. And if you know about pneumonia, after you have problems with your heart and after you have problems with your immune system, it's hell. You can't do anything. And he even had septic shock. If you know what that is, your organs start to fail, and he recovered it all. So I already thought my dad was this guy that would never be vulnerable, and now it's getting reinforced over and over and over again. So here he is, fighting illness, and at the same time he was still working. He would do this thing before there were a lot of therapists of South Asian descent in the Southeast Michigan area. He would bring people from the community into our house, and he would do therapy on the low in our guest room. He would do this. And he was helping my sister with, she was going through a divorce at the time. And my brother was getting married that same year. So this idea of him putting out fires and helping everybody out, it was very present. So I'm failing biology, and I just don't want to come home. If my parents visited me to drop off food or to give me some money, I would make one of my roommates like get it from them, or I'd make plans and you know, quickly get it from them and just sort of shoo them off. And if I went home, I'd make plans and avoid my father as well. So you can sort of picture, right? I'm always just walking in a maze around my dad, never really encountering him. And this started to take a big toll on me because I started to panic at the thought of being around my father. More hesitation than in that car when I was 15. More hesitation than in that picture when I was 9. I started to have panic attacks. And so I thought it might be a good idea to go to therapy. And so 19, 20, went to therapy, and I had this great therapist at Michigan State. I had some bad ones too, but I found a good one. Yes, please choose your therapist that works for you. Do not sit there long enough trying to please them. It's your life. But this great therapist at Michigan State, he put a chair in front of me. He figured it out real quick, because I was like, I'm anxious. I don't know why. He's like, it's your dad, dude, like, obviously. So, yeah, he was really blunt. So I'd walk into the therapy room, and he'd have a chair set up. He's like, that's your dad. I'm like, that's kind of weird, man. I don't know. And he's like, just start talking to your dad about what you want to talk to him about. And if you have that kind of pain on your chest, it doesn't matter how ridiculous the practice is, it's ready to come out. It's there. You can feel it on your chest all the time. It's coming out in your sleep. You're panicking. So I was ready to speak. So I sat there and I practiced all the things I wanted my dad to be proud about. I didn't want him to be disappointed in me. I wanted him to see the music I was making, the music I was listening to, the friends that I had, my political convictions, my prayers, everything. I wanted my dad to know. So I spent my time in therapy, about a year and a half, and I started to feel better. Awesome. But the next step to healing was, could I have these conversations, not with the chair, but with my father in his room? So at 20 years old, I decided I needed to be brave, knowing very well that I might be rejected by this big man who puts out fires and doesn't have time for baby stuff. So I went to his room on different occasions, and I started talking to him about my music and my religion and my friends and my educational interests that were different than his. And I thought, man, this guy is just going to reject me. You know, he uses all of his energy that he has left when he's sick to help everybody else out. He doesn't have time for this. The most amazing thing happened. My dad, at 20 years old, embraced me. And I knew because he actually literally embraced me. Like, when somebody loves you, they hold you in a way that, like, you just feel like, oh, it's a full body hug. And I hugged him back because I knew he needed it too. I could feel it. But there were other ways that my father embraced me. I would make him these CDs of my musical productions, and then I'd sort of just find them in his car. He was rocking to my music. And he bought me my first keyboard, you know, and he would sort of reinforce me positively the fire. He's like, you know, I disagree with you. You got bad ideas, but I love the fire. And he would just support me at all these different ends. My dad did this thing throughout our lives where he wanted to show appreciation for his kids, or he wanted us to, like, find something that we could use. He'd leave these treasure hunts. Even though he was in the house and he could have just gave it to us, he was just like, you know, he'd leave this treasure hunt for us, and, you know, we'd find something. So once upon a time, I was 20, and I found this letter. And in the letter, it said, never stop doing these 3 things. Now, mind you, I had been afraid my whole life to talk about any of these things to my father. He said, never stop doing these 3 things. He said, never stop practicing your religion. And that meant so much to me because I never prayed around my father as much as I could help it. He said, never stop your education. By then, I was getting ready for grad school, so he meant what I wanted to do with my education. And he said, never stop doing your music. That was awesome. That letter was awesome. But there are 2 vivid memories in my mind, and they work out the same pattern of how I knew my dad was proud of me, rooting for me, cheering for me. The first was in 2009 when I got into graduate school. The second was in 2010 when I got into this minority fellowship program through the federal government. There's this program where only 20 therapists of color who are getting their PhD are supported a year to finish their PhDs because we're underrepresented in mental health. So I got accepted in 2010. And on both occasions, I called my dad, and he basically did the same thing both times. So I said, Abu, you know, Dad, got into grad school or I got the fellowship. And silence. He would pause. And he'd put me on speakerphone. And he'd run and get my mom. Ulfit, Ulfit, Ulfit. He'd run and get my mom. And he would make me say it again just so he could celebrate it again. You know? And my dad was this big guy, right? But anytime I saw him cry, it meant that he was having some joy. So I could tell he was crying over the phone when he was celebrating it again and again on repeat. And I couldn't help but cry too. I think that my access point to being vulnerable was my dad being vulnerable and vice versa. So there I am in this hospital room holding my dad's foot. Where the hell is he going? We just started. I wasn't finished. Where are you going? Where is he going? Where is he going? I think in the 6 years since his passing, I've discovered a lot of things about my dad. I've studied my father. I've watched old VHS tapes of us playing. And he's like, yeah, you missed it. And I'd get so tired. I think I'd want him to know a couple things. That I noticed that he had my music on in his car. That I appreciated how hard he hugged me every single time I left and came home. That I was trying to hug him just as hard. That I will always remember what he put in that letter. That he gave me a way to celebrate my achievements that I never knew I could celebrate like that. My father's name is Allah Raka Shamoon. That means God-given. He was the only boy that made it through my grandmother's pregnancies. The rest of his siblings are sisters. So she passed away when he was 6. I think about that name, Allah Raka, God-given. And it was like he was the one that, you know, he pushed along, right? And I'm glad he did, because that's how I feel about my relationship with my father. Thank you.
Zain Shamoon, ladies and gentlemen. Honoring fathers.